All right, now we official. Okay, but I just wanted to today talk a little bit about one, the writing process, and two, I do want to introduce our very first essay. And when I say our very first, this is the first draft of an essay that will eventually end up in our portfolios. And actually, your like rough drafts will go in your portfolio as well. And again, as I was saying at the beginning of the semester, your portfolio, I keep saying that word, but your portfolio is just going to be virtual. There's no folder that you have to put together. I'm just using that old terminology. So when I say portfolio, it just means like just what we need at the end of the semester. But I said all that to say, we are going to get started on the process of our first essay today. The first draft won't be due until a week from today. So we still have time to to get everything that we need to taken care of. All right. And yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about the writing process today. Also, don't forget to do your inquisitive essays, as not essays, but inquisitive assignments. As I'm signing in, I see that I signed in earlier and I saw that only 4 students, completed the material for this week. Make sure you're taking care of those because one, it's good practice for us. All right. And two, these assignments aren't going to go away if we just ignore them. So make sure you do these assignments because yeah, this one only 4 people have done it and it was due Sunday night. And how to use Inquisitive, only 6 people have done that. So make sure you're staying, one, you're staying motivated, and two, you're just staying aware, of everything that's going on because part of being a college student is just being accountable and not letting deadlines go by you without you taking any action. So make sure, and then there's only 8 people so far registered for this for inquisitive. So make sure you make an account and then make sure you are doing these assignments because they do matter. All right. If only just for the practice, but either way, if you look at it for the practice or the score itself, it matters. So don't get yourself in the practice of ignoring assignments or, again, like I said, just letting deadlines go past you. All right. And the reality is some teachers are going to be sympathetic, some are not going to be, but it's like you can't depend on that, right? You just gotta, take care of your business. All right. Or as that old saying goes, take care of your business or your business will take care of you. All right. And with that being said, there are 2 more assignments, for next week, comma splice, and then fused or run-on sentences. So make sure you take care of those. And if you did not do the previous 2, make sure you get on those. But don't get yourself too far behind because every week there's something. And usually the way this class goes, every week we add things, right? So we still have our reading, we still have our reading questions, and we still have our discussion questions. But now we have this paper, that we're about to talk about. So don't just say I'll get to it later because there's always going to be something new, that's added on, and you're going to find yourself, just running out of time, right? So again, just make sure you get yourself caught up, right? And I get that, there's a lot, there's reading questions, there's all that, but that's how college goes, man. All right, that's how college goes. Teachers often throw work at you. All right. So make sure you do that ASAP. All right. And I think I'm going to start in reverse today. All right. So if we look at, I'm in the week 3 module on our D2L page. All right. And there's this document, the writing process, a written overview, but I really just wanted to cover the material from our book before we go over the essay itself. All right. And I think most of us, just as students and really just as people, moving through our lives every day. I would say most of us, if not all of us, write something every day. Every day we write something. All right. And if you aren't, writing something for school, right? You're sending a text message, you're sending you're updating social media and things like that. So when I say that we write every day, that kind of writing counts. All right. Yeah, social media, texting, instant messaging, all that stuff, counts as writing. But I would say the difference between that type of writing and writing that you do in an academic setting is the writing you do for classes and things of that nature. One, it's going to involve more time. All right. When you send a text message or you're updating your social media, 9 times out of 10, you just, you get right to it. You put your message in and you hit send or you hit enter or whatever. All right. But for academic writing, requires some forethought, meaning like requires some planning before you actually sit down and start committing your ideas to paper. All right. And that's actually the first step in the writing process is to brainstorm, right? Get your ideas together before you begin. Um, that goes a long way. I teach pretty much all of the writing classes that OCC has to offer, whether it's 1055, 1060, 1510, 1520. And really, I stress brainstorming and getting your ideas together beforehand in all of those classes because it's such a valuable practice, right? Getting your ideas together beforehand. The flip side is, I often encounter students who will wait, until the final moments, to start their process. And that's one, you're not going to produce your best work in that way. But two, that leads to us being stressed when we really don't have to, right? So we have a week, to get our first draft of an essay together. So, but don't wait until like Saturday night or Sunday, or excuse me, Tuesday night, or even Wednesday morning to get started. It's best, as soon as we go over the prompt, start working on it. And when I say start working on it, I don't mean, get your computer out and, start typing up your draft. I mean, start thinking about, okay, now I have the prompt, meaning I know what I'm being asked to do. Now, right, what can I do to get myself organized for this essay? Okay. And I think if you do that beforehand, it just makes the writing process a little bit easier. Writing an essay is never easy, but I think if you prepare yourself ahead of time by getting your ideas together, that will go a long way. And our textbook, gives us some strategies here, brainstorming, and really this is one of the most tried and true strategies. And it's really just jotting down ideas, like everything that comes to mind. All right. And at this stage in the writing process, you're not evaluating your ideas. You're just getting them out, really. Okay, just getting your ideas out on paper. You can do this, using your phone, like if you use the notes function, or whatever you use to jot down little things in your phone with. You can do this on a piece of scrap paper, or you can get out your computer and just type. All right. And again, like I said, at this point, at the brainstorming process or at the brainstorming stage, you're not necessarily evaluating the ideas, because once you've completed your brainstorm process, our textbook tells us, bam, look over your list. Okay. And our text tells us to try to identify connections or patterns. We can do that. But in essence, we're just going back over our brainstorm to see, okay, I have all these ideas. Now, which ideas do I want to pursue? Right. And from that point, you can start, okay, now I have these ideas that I want to pursue. Now you can start thinking about details. All right. What details do I need? Okay. And one of the things that we should keep in mind when writing is we have to get out of our own heads, meaning just because we, as the authors or as the writers, just because we understand something, we can't assume that our reader, will understand that as well. So that's when I say detail, some things that you mentioned in your essay are going to have to be explained. All right. And these are just some additional brainstorming practices. You know, free writing. Free writing is a good strategy as well, where I mean, you just write, you know, for 5 to 10 minutes. And I mean that in the most literal sense, meaning like it's not about 5 minutes or about 10 minutes. When you're free write, you're gonna set a timer for 5 minutes or for 10 minutes. And the goal, you know, is just to write for that entire time. Again, you know, just like in other brainstorming processes, you're not evaluating ideas at that time. You're just, you know, getting your ideas out. Okay. And then sifting through them to see what ideas you want to keep, right? And you know, looping, clustering, questioning, really same processes where you're just kind of getting your ideas out. And man, I can't stress the importance of planning enough. Um, and a lot of times, you know, and I, you know, I did this in the past when I was a student, but it's just sometimes we'll have an idea in our minds and we'll say, oh, you know, I got it, you know, I'm ready to start writing my paper. And then when we actually get to our paper or we start writing, that idea we had, you know, when we actually started putting it down on paper, that idea was only about like a paragraph or two's worth of material. So it's fine to start with an idea, but in your brainstorm process, that's when you have to try fleshing out those details. All right. So make sure, you know, whatever you do, however you plan to get started on your paper, get some ideas together beforehand. And you can even visualize your paper, right? Think about what you want your introduction to sound like. Think about, you know, what each of your body paragraphs is going to sound like. All right. So yeah, you know, it's really in your best interest to try to get your ideas together beforehand, you know, as you start writing. And the flip side is, like I said, or the opposite would be, don't wait till the last minute. I know many of you are thinking, or many of you have said in the past, you know, I work best under pressure. But a lot of times we say that because we've only allowed ourselves to work under pressure. And sometimes when we do that, if it's the last minute, you know, we'll trick ourselves into thinking that, you know, this okay, this is my best work. But what we're really saying is like I gotta turn this in. So, you know, I'm gonna trick myself into thinking that it's my best work. So, you know, give yourself some time. Okay. One, you produce better work, and two, it's just less stressful. All right. It's less stressful when you give yourself time and you know you're following the process. Okay. So now you've done your brainstorming. Okay, hypothetically, I'm saying you've done your brainstorming, right? And now our book tells us we need to develop a tentative thesis, and that is very true. All right. And tentative means that you know it's not set in stone. All right. Not set in stone until you actually have to turn the thing in. Even when you're writing a rough draft, your thesis statement is not set in stone. But I actually want to come back to this. And I'm saying that because our first essay that I'm about to assign to you all is a personal narrative. All right, where you're going to be discussing an experience, you know, that you went through. And the reason I'm coming back, you know, to thesis statements is in personal narratives, you have a little bit of freedom as far as your thesis statement goes, meaning you have freedom about what it says and where it's placed. In a traditional sense, our thesis statement is usually placed at the end of our introduction paragraph. But for these essays, you know, we have a little bit of leeway. So um, I will show you, you know, some ideas for your thesis statement for this essay, but just know that in the future we're going to change directions just a little bit. So I'll come back to that when we you know, when we do our common essay. All right. Now, here's what I want us to focus on. Okay. Drafting. All right. So pre-writing, which is getting yourself organized, that can also be an outline as well. That's not mentioned in our book, but outlines are great for one, developing your papers, and two, they're also great just for getting organized. Meaning, like I want to talk about this first, you know, this next, and so on and so forth. So, Yeah, outlines are great. All right. Now, okay, but you've done your brainstorming. All right. Now you're ready to sit down and compose your draft. Okay. Here's something that we often don't take into consideration when we're writing, right? Our environment matters. Okay. Our environment matters, meaning you should be in a place where you can focus. All right. Sometimes that means being in a room, with the door closed. Sometimes that even means, being in a car. It's unfortunate that we have to rock like that sometimes, but that's just what it is sometimes. When campus is open, you can go into our library or our writing lab. I want to say, and I'll look more into this, but I want to say you can still use our labs on your home campus, but on a very limited basis. And again, I'll just have to research into that, but I want to say there is space for folks who are in need of computers, or sometimes you just need a quiet place. But let me look into that before I commit to that. All right. But again, try to make sure your setting is, conducive to writing is what I'm saying. Sometimes first thing in the morning, if you don't have, like to get the kids ready and all that, sometimes first thing in the morning, is a good time to do it. And then first thing in the morning, your brain is usually fresh as well. All right. Or, late in the evening, right? When you put everybody to bed and it's like, okay, now I got this time to focus. All right. So I think when you sit down and put your draft together, the first thing you should do is, try to create an environment that's as conducive to writing as possible. And again, do what's within your power. Sometimes you have no control over your environment. I get that. So try to manage your environment as best you can. Okay. So I think that's the first thing you should do when you're embarking on this process. Also, try to control the noise level. Again, there's some things that are going to be out of your control with that. But if you have music on, music is fine, when you're reading and writing, but music with words is just going to distract you. So if you're writing, try to write what's if you need music or you need just some sound, try to use music, with no words, right? And students have told me in the past, they'll go to YouTube and just cut on one of those like thunderstorm sounds, or I have another student who just like ocean sounds or whatever. Maybe there's just some ambient noise you need. That's fine. But music, and if you don't believe me, you can look up the research. But music with words is going to distract your brain, when you write. All right. And I know we've been sold, the Kool-Aid on multitasking, but multitasking, and again, this is science speaking, not me. You can do your own research if you don't believe me, but science right now is telling us that multitasking is not even a real thing, meaning that we don't do multiple things at once. We just go from task to task to task like very rapidly. And what happens is, instead of like devoting 100% of our attention to one thing, we approach things like with fractured attention. And we really aren't, doing as well as we could, because, instead of, focusing all of our attention on this one project, we split it, between multiple projects. So what I'm saying is, when we're writing, try not to have multiple tabs open on your computer, because that's going to distract you. Definitely try not to be on your phone, because that's going to distract you. All right. Say you're writing an essay, you're in a good flow, and then you get a text message. Now you're involved in this text conversation. So now, instead of just focusing on your paper, you're also involved in this text conversation. All right. And believe it or not, your teachers can tell when you're not focused when you're writing. It definitely comes through when you're writing.
All
So
right. And what you want me to do with them shirts in that game?
the first thing I want you to do is mute yourself. Dante's iPad. Never mind, I got you. All right. Now, All right. So yeah, my people, focus. Okay, focus. Focus is going to be one of your best assets, when you're writing. So put the phone away. And if you have to have it out because you need to be in contact with the kids or some family member, um, put your phone face down. All right. So you aren't constantly looking at it. And again, you can research this if you want to, but the manufacturers of our phones know exactly how to attract our attention. So they're really designed to distract us in some ways. All right. So don't let your phone control you. Remember that it's just a piece of technology that you have complete control over. All right. So now when you're putting your draft together, our book tells us that you can write in spurts. Okay. There's no law that says you have to write your entire draft in one sitting. In fact, I always encourage students, instead of trying to write it all in one sitting, do a little bit every day. Okay. That way, again, one, you're seeing your paper develop over time, but also it's less stressful, right? And you could even take that a step further, and your own schedule, so you can say, hey, I'm free every day from 4 to 5, so I'm going to designate that time for working on my paper. And once you designate that time, really commit to it, right? For this time, from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, or from 4 to 4:30. Doesn't even have to be a full hour. All right, I'm just going to be focused for this time, and I'm only going to work on my paper. The people in my phone, my social media, everything else can wait until I'm done. Why? Because this is the most important thing right now. Okay. But again, only you control that, and only you know your schedule. So I would just say, practice. Get in the practice of, working on it a little bit every day. And, sometimes working on it is thinking about it. Sometimes working on it is just, taking a scrap piece of paper and jotting down some ideas, because as I'm pretty sure you all are aware, sometimes ideas just hit you, when you're doing something totally unrelated. And in fact, sometimes that's when our best ideas come to us, when we're doing something totally unrelated, and we just have like these aha moments. All right. So, you know, take your time. Okay. Take your time. Okay. Or write in spurts. Okay. Now, okay. Don't be surprised if your writing changes directions, as you're writing. You may have had this idea in mind, but once you start putting it down on paper, it takes a turn. And that's fine, when it comes to writing. And I think that's the beauty of the writing process. It's this process of discovery. And really, especially when you're writing a personal draft, a personal essay that we're about to write, it's really a process of self-discovery. Okay. So it's fine. All right. Now, this next one is key for us. Okay. Man, expect to write more than one draft. Now, for us, as English 1060 people, it is mandated, right, that we have to write more than one draft. Okay. And remember, 2 rough drafts and a final for every essay. All right. That's what has to go in our portfolio. So it's mandated that we write multiple drafts. But all right, in the future, when you get out of this class, you're going to have classes where they aren't writing classes, but you are going to have to write essays in there. And a lot of, like, a history class or a sociology class, or a class of that nature. And a lot of times your teachers only want to see the final draft, meaning they don't care if you do a final if you do rough drafts. But it's always in your best interest to do a rough draft, and even to do some let someone else read your draft, all right, before it goes to your instructor. In this class, I'll be the one giving you feedback on your drafts, but it's always good to have an additional set of eyes on your draft. Okay. So get your draft out, and then another thing about the drafting process, and it kind of leads into this next point, don't worry about correctness, right? um we're going to go back. There's going to be multiple drafts of this essay. So really, your first draft, get your ideas out, and don't worry about how it looks just yet. Okay. Don't worry about how it sounds. Of course, do your best with this draft, but you're gonna have opportunities to go back and revise it. So it's best to just get your ideas out with this draft. Also, try not to revise on the fly. Meaning, like you write a paragraph or two paragraphs, you read it back to yourself. I don't like that, and then you just delete the whole thing and start over. Whatever you're coming up with on your first draft, just keep going. Okay, just keep going. Trust me, I'm not gonna be judging you, so don't judge yourself. Okay. I'll give you feedback, but my feedback is pretty much about like how can we revise this and enhance what you already have. Okay. So you can always go back and change and revise what you have. So really when you're writing your first draft, especially when you know there's going to be multiple rough drafts, when you're writing that first rough draft, just get it out. Okay, just get your ideas out. Try to organize it as best you can. But it's kind of like you're making that pottery, and you're starting off with this just a lump of clay, and that's what our rough drafts are going to look like, right? And they may look rough. That's fine, okay, because we're going to go back. But again, the main goal of this rough draft, getting your ideas out, getting it done. Once you've gotten it done, you're already moving forward. Okay, so don't be overly critical of yourself, when you're writing this draft. Okay, now, man, here we can come back to this because when you submit a draft to me, I'm gonna give it back to you with my feedback on there. And I do, write a lot on your papers, especially first drafts. And then, I want us to come back, and review some of that commentary together. So we'll save this getting a response. But I think the thing is, when we get a response, whether it's from your instructor or whether it's from one of your peers, it's always important to evaluate the feedback. Okay. Don't just go through your paper and, start fixing everything that has a comment next to it. Really read and think about the comments, that you get on an essay. All right. And again, comments are they're just suggestions. Okay. At the end of the day, it's your paper, your name goes on it, and it's going in your portfolio. So, you decide, what revisions you make to your paper. Okay. So now, once you get your draft together and you submitted it, okay, and I give it back to you, or your if it's not this class, one of your other instructors, or maybe a peer, because you guys are just doing peer review. Okay. Now it's time for you to revise. All right. And revision is actually one of the most important parts of the writing process. So if we're following a sequence, it goes pre-writing, or pre-writing is just getting your ideas together. And then we go into drafting, where you're putting a rough draft together. And now you're at the revision stage. This is after you've gotten your draft back from me or your instructor or the tutor. I'll show you how to use NetTutor in a second here. All right. When you revise, again, you're not focusing on like the smaller aspects of your paper. And when I say small, I mean typos. Um, I mean word choice, like excuse me, there, and there, and things of that nature. Really, those are proofreading issues where we're not focused on them in the revision process. Revision focuses on big ideas, content, right? Am I organized, right? And is my audience going to understand what I'm saying? Or, could I say this differently? All right. Paragraphs, right? Am I, writing cohesive paragraphs, or, am I kind of all over the place? These are the ideas that you're thinking about when you revise. Okay. Save that other stuff like typos and dotting I's and crossing T's and all that. Save that for the editing process. But revision focuses on big ideas. Okay. And the first, stage, give yourself time. Okay. That's the main thing. Again, not waiting until the last minute. All right. And it's the same thing. You're not starting from scratch, once you start a new draft, but you are reevaluating, your paper. And if we look at this word revision, re just means again, and vision just means to see. So really that's what you're looking at. That's what you're doing when you get your paper back. See again. All right. So you're going back over your paper. You're checking for organization. Our textbook tells us revise or sharpen your focus. Okay. Strengthen your argument. For us, for our paper, we just want to strengthen the clarity of our ideas. All right. And then improve organization. Okay. And at some point in your academic careers, whether it's middle or elementary school, middle school, high school, at some point we may have learned like the 5-paragraph model for essays. And we essentially still use that model in college. The only difference is where, in the past, the 5-paragraph model was intro, our body paragraphs, and then or 3 body paragraphs in conclusion. The formula is still the same. The only difference is, college essays tend to require more body paragraphs. So if you use the sandwich analogy where, the top bun is your introduction, your body paragraphs are whatever you like on your sandwich, and the bottom bun is your conclusion. The difference is we just have bigger sandwiches in college, but you still have a top bun, which is your intro. You just have more toppings on your sandwich. And then you still have a bottom bun, which is your conclusion. Okay. So 5-paragraph model still holds, but you just need more body paragraphs, or you need a bigger sandwich. All right. So, you're focusing on organization and content when you revise. Okay. And then, right, are my readers going to understand what I'm saying? Okay. And again, just because you understand something or it's understood in your circle, that doesn't necessarily mean that your audience will understand it. Okay. So, think about it. Try to put yourself in your audience's shoes. Will they understand what I'm saying to them? All right. Am I using the right words to reach my audience? And it really goes back to audience awareness. Okay. Now, editing. Okay. Is really the final stage of the writing process, editing and proofreading. Okay. Now that you're done with your paper, or just about done with the revisions, now you're going back through your paper, checking for fragments, checking for run-ons. All right. Now you're checking for typos and mistakes of that nature. So, and then our text gives us some strategies for editing. Okay, editing and proofreading. So again, if we're following the writing process, it's pre-writing, it's drafting, it's revision, and then it's editing and proofreading. Okay, that's our sequence. And right now we're sort of in the pre-writing stages, but not really, because I haven't laid the prompt on you just yet. All right. And if you need to review that material, we started on page 9 in our textbooks, and then it wraps up, on page 16. All right. But really, we don't do group or peer reviewing for this class, but probably when you guys get to your next English class, which is English 1510, there's going to be some, peer element in that class. So, just brace yourself for it. All right. So now I just want to go back here. And like I was saying before, what I just covered is broken down, kind of concisely in this the writing process document. So if you need, just a quick refresher, it's right here. Okay. Pre-writing, drafting, revising, editing. Same thing we just went over. All right. Same thing we just went over. Now, let's get to it, folks. Okay. Here's our essay. Bam. Everything is in this week 3 module. We do have a discussion question actually 2 discussion questions. One about the writing process, and then one about our book. Okay. Hopefully you all are enjoying the book so far. And like I was saying in the beginning of the semester, it is I've taught this class a lot of times and I don't choose the books, but this book is actually one of the ones that I'm particularly fond of. Okay, here's our reading questions from the week as well. And then here's our essay. All right, I'm just gonna click on it. All right. Okay. And then I'm just gonna bring it up as a Word document. So again, here it is, on D2L, but if you go down to the bottom, here it is as a Word document. And that's the one I'm gonna look at. But they're identical. All right, now, okay. Here's our essay, folks. First essay. Okay, don't be nervous about this thing because it's nothing I'm sure you haven't done before. Okay. And if you have, it's your first time doing it, I'm here to guide you. I'm here to guide you and assist. Okay. So English 1060 instructor chosen essay. What life lessons have you learned from adversity? And if you don't know, adversity is just like a rough patch or an obstacle. Okay, that I'm sure we've all faced, no matter who we are and what we've been through. All right. The obstacles we face in life are often the greatest teachers. Each time we fall, we eventually rise stronger and wiser. Think of a time in your life when you experienced a setback. Okay. So here's part of it. I am. So when did you experience a setback? All right. When did you go through a difficult time? And difficult, that's up to you. I leave that in your hands. All right. It could be, losing a loved one. It could be, not making the basketball team or whatever. It could be struggling, with 10th grade algebra. That's up to you, right? This experience could be related to your education, upbringing, employment, family, health, or any other aspect of your life that presented you with a challenge. Reflect on what you learned from that experience. This is your chance to show a little of what has helped you become the person you are today. All right, now, again, more logistics of it. In an essay of 4 full pages, using MLA formatting guidelines. MLA formatting guidelines is just name, instructor name, class, and date on the left, last name, page number on the right, and you're double spacing properly. All right. So in an essay of 4 full pages using MLA formatting guidelines, discuss some of the challenges you have faced and what you have learned from them. Okay. And these essays work best if you just focus on like one or two, challenges. All right. And if you're going to focus on more than one, make sure there's a connection between the two. Like you don't want to just have a list of, things that you've experienced in your paper. All right. And you also don't want to like tell your entire life story. We just don't have the time or the space for that. As interesting as I'm sure many of you have led, interesting lives, but you don't have time to or the space to tell everything. All right. So this is your first essay for your portfolio. You will need at least 2 rough drafts and one final draft for this essay to be considered complete. Okay. So we're just getting started on the first draft. So now we're just going to think about the process, right? Begin by brainstorming. Think about what event or events in your life you will discuss. So we started, talking about the writing process, just talking about brainstorming. And for this essay, we're going to do some specific brainstorming. Think about what event or events in your life you will discuss. We're thinking about this beforehand, right? So now once you settled on, okay, here's what I'm going to discuss, right? Um, that time in 5th grade, or excuse me, that time in 11th grade where, I had to pass American government or I wasn't going to pass high school or I wasn't going to graduate, right? So if that's what you're going to write about now, start thinking about the details of that experience. Okay. When did it happen? Where did it happen? Who was involved? Right. So try to work out those details ahead of time, like before you start writing, because again, that will go a long way, in the drafting process. All right. So yeah, think about detail, what you're gonna include. And then, try seeing your essay. Try visualizing the structure of it. How you gonna start? Okay. Typically, introduction paragraphs include some kind of attention grabber. Okay. Could be an interesting statement, could be some interesting statistic, although I don't want you to rely too heavily on that for this essay. But sometimes it applies. Maybe you begin with a short quote. Martin Luther King once said, and then have a short quote. Yours doesn't have to come from Dr. King, of course. Maybe there's some related quote. But yeah, think about how you're going to start. Okay. How are you going to organize your body paragraphs? Okay. Personal narratives are, typically organized chronologically, meaning like you discuss what happened first, then second, and so on and so forth. All right. And then, what's your conclusion going to look like? If you've ever watched, Jerry Springer, your conclusion is actually your final thought. Okay. So, what are you going to leave your reader with? All right. So now you're working on a rough draft. Okay. Use this space to get your ideas out on paper. Now, when it's all said and done, the whole thing has to be 4 pages, but your rough draft is a minimum of 2 pages. If you want to go beyond 2 pages for your first rough draft, be my guest. Okay. Do that. All right. But your first rough draft, 2 pages. All right. And, try to, do your best, but at the same time, be mindful of what we were just talking about, right? When you're doing your draft, you're not criticizing yourself. You're not evaluating it at that point, right? You're just getting your ideas out. So don't worry about how it looks. Okay. Don't worry about how it sounds just yet. Okay. It's just a step in the process. So the first draft is not the finished process, the finished product by any means. So, don't put that kind of pressure on yourself to make it look like the final project. And then, here's just some additional tips, right? Start with an intro. Okay. And I have a thesis. I have start with a thesis statement or include a thesis statement expressing a lesson that you learn from overcoming obstacles. So your thesis statement could really say something like this. All right. Failing algebra my junior year taught me to take education seriously. All right. A statement like that could be your thesis statement in this essay. Okay. So really your thesis statement should mention the obstacle and then what you learned from it. That's it. All right. So you don't have to have usually thesis statements make a claim or make an argument in some way. But for these, since these essays are personal narratives, you can just state the obstacle and what you learned from it. All right. So yeah, make sure your introduction is organized though, to the best of your abilities in your first draft. Okay. Remember, first draft, get your ideas out. We can always go back and revise. All right. And then, use your body paragraphs to discuss your experiences. Try to write these as organized as you can in the first draft. Now, one of the main things in this essay is you're discussing, this thing that you went through, right? This obstacle that you encountered, but you're also expressing, what you learned from going through that obstacle. So make sure that's part of your essay as well. All right. And when you get to that part of your essay, try to use concrete language or concrete details, meaning like show your reader how you're living out. Meaning like if you say what I said down here, failing algebra taught me to take my education seriously. How are you putting that into practice? Okay. How are you putting that into practice? And for me, if I was putting this thing together, I would say, when I got to college, I had a different attitude, than the attitude I had from high school. And I would give some specific examples. But again, just do your best on your first draft and then just wrap up with your conclusion, make a lasting impression, and then a couple more points. Now, here's something that we can do, even though it's our first draft, and I do want you to get your ideas out. but try not to make your essay one giant paragraph. Break it down. Okay, start a new paragraph when you begin discussing a new idea, or start a new paragraph when you want to just give your reader a moment to pause and reflect on what you're talking about. Okay, and then it just says start with your rough draft. Oh, this is the main one of the most important things as well. Don't wait till the last minute. Okay, do not wait until the last minute. You are going to sabotage yourself if you wait to the last minute. And sometimes, and I've been there before, like as a student and as a teacher, but I've been there. Sometimes we will overestimate the amount of time that we have. It's like, okay, I got a week to do this. But what we don't take into consideration is this week that we have is also going to be filled with activities. Okay. If you have to work, right? If you have kids to take care of, or other family members to take care of, okay, you have other obligations. And then somewhere in the midst of all that, you want to cram a social life in there too. So it's just like, if you do have a week, plan out that week. Plan that week. Okay, make a schedule. All right. Use the calendar on your phone. All right. But you will not get the results you are looking for if you wait to the last minute. All right. Writing doesn't happen by magic, by planning. And that's another thing we need to take into consideration when we think about writing, right? It's not some kind of magic skill that some people are born with. Now, are there some people who are just born with a propensity for wordplay? Yeah. Okay. Some people are just born with certain talents, right? But for the rest of us, writing is a skill that we can learn, that we can get better at if we practice. Maya Angelou, right? The nation's poet laureate for a while, but one of our, I would just say one of history's most renowned poets. All right, but Maya Angelou, she says, people often say, like, comment on how great of a writer she is, but she says she had to practice just like everybody else, right? Toni Morrison as well, one of this generation, one of this generation's most prolific writers and celebrated writers. But Toni Morrison also says, I have to practice, just like everyone else. So don't wait till the last minute. Give yourself time, all right, and you'll get the results that you're looking for. Okay, and then write undistracted, and then this failing algebra thing I just put as an example. All right. But that's on D2L, my good people. Okay. 2 pages. Just put it in the proper assignment folder. Okay. Any questions about your essay? Okay. We still here. We're live and well. Okay.
So do we have to submit two rough drafts essentially and then the final draft, or just the final draft?
Nope. Here's the pattern. All right. You submit a rough draft to me. I read it and give you my feedback. And then I give it back to you. And then you start working on that second draft. Right? So don't once you submit this first draft, that's all we're on the hook for right now. You don't need to submit your second draft until you get that first draft back. All right. But to answer your question fully, Juliana, when it's all said and done at the end of the semester, or really at the end of the instructor chosen essay process, we will have done 2 rough drafts and then 1 final draft. All right. But for next week, we just need the 1 draft in.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Okay, cool. Now, before I send you out of here to work on this stuff, I'm gonna recap all this in a D2L update. Once I get the Zoom meeting converted and put on my YouTube, and then I'll get that posted on our D2L page. But while we're here, let me just go back over the assignments we are accountable for next week. Just respond to this real quick. Yes, the essay is due Wednesday, the 14th. All right. And now here's what's due Sunday night. Okay. Sunday, right? First thing, okay. You have a discussion question, right? The writing process. Click on, oops, I didn't mean, I thought I was in student view. Right. When you click on it, it'll look different, but it's pretty much the same thing. All right. Academic writing can present many challenges, but taking your time and following the process can help you work through some of these issues that may arise. In this week's discussion post, discuss the following. How do you think academic writing differs from the writing we do every day? Social media posts, texts, journal entries, etc. So how do you think the writing you do in a class, like in an academic setting, is different from the writing you do every day? Okay, like who in here proofreads text messages? I know I don't. Right? And as people who know me and know that I teach English, expect my text messages to sound better, but it's like, man, I'm just trying to communicate this message. Did you get it or not? All right. But the flip side is if I do have to write something in an academic setting, the process is going to be different for me. All right. And then, in your own words, what's a thesis statement? Okay. I know we barely covered what a thesis statement is, and that's great for now because I want to hear in your own words. Don't look it up. Okay. Don't Google. I want to hear in your own words what a thesis statement is. Okay. And don't worry about getting this right or wrong. Okay. Just in your own words. I'm more interested in hearing what you think than some answer you can go look up. All right. In fact, just discuss what you learned in the past about thesis statements. That's fine. And then what are at least two brainstorming strategies that you have used in the past or plan to use? Okay. And then finally, what's the difference between revision and editing? Okay. You may have to look this one up, but yeah, I just want to hear your take on it. So, when you're ready to make your post, you just go start a new thread and then you enter your response. Okay. Now, that is one of our discussion questions. Our second one is geared towards the book. One up, no. Okay. And like I said, really interesting so far, all right, in what we've read. Okay. Trevor Noah learned to speak 6 languages growing up. 6. Okay. Trevor explains that under apartheid, the coexistence of multiple languages promoted division and oppression. Okay. How did Trevor and his mother use language to cross legal and social boundaries and navigate challenging situations? How can language create both barriers and a sense of unity? Meaning, how can language separate us, but how can it bring us together? Okay. And then this one's personal. Have you had a time when language acted as a barrier to working with others? Now, this could be, right? You speak Spanish and the environment you were in, was an English-based environment and that presented an issue, or vice versa. Or it could be, maybe people are speaking a dialect that you don't understand. Maybe you went to a new job, right? And they're the people at this job are using all this terminology you don't understand, right? Or maybe you're in a different environment and people are using like I guess slang and other terminology you don't understand. So when I say language, it could be like different languages like English and Arabic, or English and French, or French and Arabic, or whatever. Or it could be the people in this region speak differently than the people in that region, or I started a new job and I didn't understand the terms they were using. So think about that, right? I know when I started school, I was taking classes and I really didn't know what was going on because I didn't understand the language, being spoken, right? So, think about that as you put your answer together for this. So this is our second discussion question. And then, reading questions. Okay. The directions are the same as last week. It's just these questions are based on 35 to 74. I'm in the process of reading and uploading your first set of reading questions, and I'm gonna have a few more essays to grade from my other classes. So I'm hoping to get those done tonight, but I'll have them uploaded to you all tomorrow at the latest. Okay, so make sure you knock those out. Okay, and then there's some vocab terms at the bottom, and then here's our essay. The essay itself isn't due until the 14th. All right, and then inquisitive. Get it done. Okay, check the dates on these. Right, here's what's due the 11th. Okay, but at the same time, if you did not do these two, make sure you do them. But in the future, make sure you're staying current, with all that needs to be done. All right. And then the final thing is the reading. Just to refresh our memories. Okay. This is a short reading too. 75 to 100. Okay, hot 25 pages. You can knock that out whenever you get some spare moments. All right. And for my folks who are going with the Kindle, or if you have another digital version of the book, we're reading from the chapter entitled Loopholes, which is chapter 6. And you're going to stop at chapter 8, which is Robert. All right. So 75 to 100, or if you have if you have a digital version of the book, chapter 6 to chapter 8, loopholes to Robert. All right. Questions for your humble instructor? Oh, okay. Get yourselves caught up. All right. I'm about to stop recording.